and why they're important. The week before that, we sort of tried to get a better understanding as to why it's important to get to where we want to get with business through social media. And today, what we want to do is to talk about social networking metrics. Now, social networking metrics are those opportunities, if you will, to learn about how well we're doing online. So in plain English, social networking metrics help us to get a good understanding as to where we are with our investment on social media, right? So unless you install and you get started with social networking metrics and monitoring tools, right, you really won't be able to know how well you're doing. So that's why what we're going to talk about today are the following. What to measure. So we need to identify what do we need to measure and why. Types of tools, social media monitoring tools that help us to do just that, right? And then whether there are some free commercials, there are hundreds of thousands of tools, right? There are free ones, there are commercial ones. And the next one is to choose the right one for you. Well, how do you ensure that you choose the right tool for your own business, for your own social networking activities? What are some of the tools inside that we need to look into and why? And also, what do we need to report? What are some of those things that we need reporting back, right? Because you're not going to report absolutely everything. You're not going to report every single activity. But you're going to report key things that matter to the business, right? Or to senior management. And then in the end, maybe quickly about weekly talk. So, let's dive into it. Metrics and what to measure. As I said, metrics are those specific insights, right, on understanding how well you're doing online, especially in particularly social media. Now there are different metrics that we want to look into. There are several more, but these are some of the most popular ones. And the first one, and what to measure, is really trying to get an understanding as to how much traffic is coming from social media because you've done something with social, right? And by doing this, you will then use Google Analytics, for instance, that is installed in your website to actually start to see how much of that traffic is coming from social media and exactly what are some of the keywords and the content that is driving that traffic. The next one is community engagement. How much of those social media activities are helping you with community engagement? So what's the engagement online? Which means that how many people are interacting with the content? And if so, what they're doing with it. The next one is how relevant your content is. Right? Now, the relevant content really gets shared quite a lot, gets commented quite a lot, and gets sort of driven by communities online quite a bit. And then also measure the sentiment, which is the idea of understanding what's the good or the bad of the content that is being published. So being able to understand specifically how was the sentiment of the content that you're publishing online is quite important. And then ultimately you've got the conversion rate. Now conversion rate is defined as a desired action that we want our visitors online to take, right? So for instance, if we've got social media activities on our business, right? What we want to be very clear as to what do we try to do, what are we trying to achieve with those social media activities? Are we trying to increase the number of people subscribing to our website? So the subscription can be the conversion rate, like a goal for your conversion rate can be increasing the number of subscribers. Another goal conversion can be selling more products that are online, right? Or it could be improving the, the number of engagements of users online on social media activities. Or maybe your goal could be to get more people to download your YouTube videos, right? So there's several types of goals that you would have as a business when it comes to conversion rate. So remember, conversion rate is not always about selling. When you read in some literature, mostly you'll see a lot of definitions around the idea that social conversion rates are all about selling, but in reality conversion rates are about any other thing that might be of interest to you as a business. Because if you have a blog or if you have a YouTube channel, you are not interested to sell something, because you're not selling anything on YouTube unless you've got a specific subscription to YouTube Red, the content that is being sold online. You are trying to get people to subscribe to your content. So that's something that is quite important to understand. However, ultimately, in business, conversion is going to matter a lot, because you will have to know how much of those engagements are coming back to business with some sort of benefit. Now, what matters is measured. That's really important. So there's so many things you can measure, right? But as a business, you need to start thinking about where you are as a business and what are those social networking activities you're involved with and what matters to you most before you start measuring everything. Most of the social networking monitoring tools online, they will let you measure absolutely everything. But not all that information is relevant to you. You'll have to pick up the key things that matter to you the most. Now, if we get into more details, well, reach is an important part, right? It's an important metric. It really tells you very much how far the content has sort of been shared, right? What's the reach and the number of people exposed to that content, right? So the reach is important because it tells you many other things, right? It tells you that if the content has been exposed to lots of people, then it might be that people either finding it useful or they want to interact with it. The next one is frequency, then the average number of times someone is exposed to that content. So how often people are exposed to the content that you're publishing? That's an important one. Site stickiness. Well, how long people stick to the site. Now, that doesn't have to be just the actual website. It can be a YouTube channel, it can be a Facebook fan page, or it can be a Twitter account, whatever it is. But what's the stickiness? How long people visit and stay in the site, right? The next one is relative pulse. In other words, a comparison of how well different creative executions are helping you with a business to create some more relevant and creative ideas when it comes to the online social media. Click-throughs, right? The number of people are exposed to an online link and then they actually click on it. So, you're publishing something on your tweet and there is a link in there, right? So, some people might just look at it and that's an impression, right? But if someone clicks through it, and of course that is the click-through. So, how many people has clicked through out of all of those who've seen it, right? Or how many people actually see the content, which is what the impressions do, right? And then sometimes you might have people who are looking at it, looking at your tweet, reading it, right? But actually not clicking it through. So they have seen it, so the impression is quite good, the impression rate is quite good. But then people hasn't gone all the way through to click through and see what the content was. And that's why social networking sites like Twitter, they are now displaying images and videos straight in the timeline. You know why? Because people just didn't bother to click, right? And not clicking means for Twitter no engagement. And no engagement means no business, because you can't really have a successful advertising platform if you do not have people engaged to the site. And that's the reason why Facebook does extraordinarily well, because there's so much of engagement going on in there. And when you go in Facebook, there's a lot more you do before you leave. Whereas with Twitter, you go in, quickly look at something and then move on to something else. There is just not enough time that people spend in Twitter. And that's the biggest challenge with Twitter. And that's why they working really hard to try and find out the way of increasing that engagement with the platform. Because if that engagement with the platform keeps getting reduced, really that's going to be a real problem for the social network. Sales conversion, the number of people who click through, who go and then purchase the product. So again, That's part of conversion rate. But again, as I said to you, that's why it's defined as a sales conversion, because conversion rate can be about selling and other things, as I said earlier. View-throughs, the number of people who are exposed and do not click through. So they just view the content, but later visit the brand's website. So they've seen the actual link, but they haven't clicked through it, but then maybe later on they'll look into it. Now, these are some of the key metrics. Again, there's a lot more, but as a business, you will identify the ones that matter the most to you. And once you've done that, then you will go after those metrics for specific social networks that you've got. Again, to continue with that, a first date or a marriage. Okay, now, when it comes to the online, what matters is the quality and the feel of that engagement that you have with the users. Not just the amount of views and the amount of click-throughs and things like that you get, but actually, what's the degree of engagement, right? You might be going on a date for a very long time with someone you really like, but if there's no feel to it, it's not going to lead anywhere, right? But if there's some feel to it after the second date, you know that there's something in there. So because of that feel, of that engagement that you are having with that individual, then you can start to see some long-term thing, right? So you start to see that that sort of relationship can have potential to go somewhere else, right? So then what do? We need to try and understand, very quickly, how many of those interactions drive the feel and engagement with your own content on social media, right? And then, obviously, how much of the quality touch points you get because of those engagement online. And then again, what we need to know is that how do we relate to some of those key performance indicators, which means that are those metrics that are tied to organization objectives, which means that once you set up clear objectives within the company, KPIs help us achieve those objectives, right? KPIs are those key metrics that help us, and really we measure our objectives and how well we've done with them through the KPIs. But normally you will set the KPI first, and then you will move on into, you'll set the objectives first, and then you move on to the KPIs, because they're tied very, very strongly with the organization objectives in general. So, now if we look at an example, for instance, on the food chain engagement online, on social media, for instance, what do we have first? We've got, let's see, someone saw the ad, someone went into the product page, they saved it, maybe they rated the product, maybe they repeated the same thing, commented on it, clicked on it, interacted, purchased, and then recommended. Right? This is like a food chain of what we do, especially when it comes to groceries online. Right? These are some of the activities we go through. And again, by knowing which are some of the metrics you are interested in, that can help you sort of like get a better understanding as to how well you're doing online. But the only way to do that is by identifying what is that you're trying to achieve, and what are some of those metrics that help you to measure how well you're doing online. And again, just keep this in mind. If you can't measure, you can't really improve. Because then you've got no idea what's working, what's not working. Right? It's almost like building up the most innovative product in the world, but everything to that day when the innovation came about, you've forgotten about it because you haven't really tracked it, or you haven't saved those processes. To use that innovation might mean nothing, because you have got no idea what happened what's behind the scene, right? And that process behind the scene is as important as the actual product. Because that process is the development time and all that thinking and all that failing and succeeding that has helped us get to this final bit. So it's the same with online. So the idea of how well we're doing online and all of those engagements online that are happening across different social networking channels are important, but what happens behind the scene is as important as the success that we're having in that final year later. Again, let's just have a quick review about it. Well, we will need to identify context that those metrics are set in for. Right? In other words, you will need to identify what is the context that you are trying to learn more about the things in a specific social networking channel. And of course, in addition to that, you need to measure so that you can get a really good understanding as to what visitors and customers online think about you. That's why I said, whatever you think about social media, okay, you've got to keep one thing in mind, that is very much a gold mine of information, right? And information is essential. Information is the currency of digital economy, right? So, if you really be able to identify relevant information to you, then you can get those social networking activities to the next level. In addition to that, the only way of doing it is by getting a really good understanding as to what are some of those objectives within the company, right? What are some of those KPIs? What are some of those metrics that matters to you the most and to your business based on the KPIs you've got? And then, which are specific social networking monitoring tools you're going to use to learn more about those metrics? And keep an eye on those metrics on a day-to-day basis. And the reason for that is because unless you know what matters to measure, and then also have specific social networking activities through social networking monitoring tools, you are, in trouble, right? Social networking monitoring tools are very much software or website that act as software online. You don't have to download them, but you can just go to the website, sign up for them, add unique login details of all your individual websites on social media, or your social media channels like LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, whatever it is. And then the actual site, the actual tool, right, will do all that data crunching for you. It works out hundreds of thousands of interactions behind the scene, and then it provides a pretty good report in a very nice layout in front of you. Yeah? We'll talk about them shortly. An approach that is quite relevant when it comes to measuring online is the process of data. And the data stands for defining, assessing, tracking, and then adjusting. Now, data model is really useful, and simply because it's very, very nice. I like it a lot, because you need to define what you are trying to measure, define the result that the program is designed to promote, so define exactly what you're trying to promote, assess the cost of a program and the potential value of the results, track the actual results in those probable ideas and solutions and the program that you've got for yourself, and then adjust to the program based on the results and optimize for your future outcome. So in other words, you define what you're trying to get to, you assess the cost and other activities related to that program, you track, again, how well you do with those results, and then you adjust based on that. So in other words, if you know what you are trying to get out of social media, you have got very clear metrics put in place, specific social networking tools that help you to measure that. Now the next thing you're going to do is that you're going to adjust and improve based on your online performance. So the whole idea is to try and identify areas where we can do a better job. So, an example could be, if you've been promoting content for quite a while on Twitter, for instance, but it just very much drives no engagement, no activities, no click-through rates, no impressions or very little impressions or no click-through rates whatsoever, then what you need to do, you need to go back, reflect on the content you published, and then see whether there are some areas that you can identify different types of content, or make adjustments on the way so that when you publish content, it might reach out to more people and be more successful. if you look at social media campaigns in general, normally are those the most popular activities where social media monitoring tools are very important. So in other words, when you run a campaign, that's when you really want to track and measure as much as you can. So if you look at, for instance, a sample of social media campaign timeline in here based on Oliver Blanchard on social media ROI, you'll just start to see that at different weeks we've got different activities based on our own needs within our own business. But this is just an example of his own ROI on introducing some of his work that he has done. And he's talking about press release, he's talking about tweeting, he's talking about blog posts, publishing, engaging, podcasts, and all sorts of things at specific times of the year, of course. And again, what you need to do then as a business, you will need to identify what are some of those key milestones on social networking strategy that you have to push out content, and then have in place monitoring tools that help us to track how well we're doing with these, right? So that's the whole idea, and the whole focus is to try and learn as much as we can and be really good at those monitoring tools. And again, monitoring tools are around the web for all sorts of things, not just social media, right? Networking tool, monitoring tools online have been around for quite a long time, right? Because we wanted to measure not just, even when there were no social, very little social media, we wanted to measure how much we were doing with, for instance, pay-per-click advertising, SEO online and things like that. So search engine optimization, pay-per-click and so on, affiliate marketing and so on. They were quite important channels for us to measure how well we do. And we did that through monitoring tools online. But now we've got a lot more social media monitoring tools that are tailored to social activities. But that doesn't mean that monitoring tools like Google can't help us to get a good understanding of social media. Okay, the data approach, the data model is quite good, and if we look into that, we will get a good understanding as to the fact that we need to define, as we said earlier, the result that the program is designed to promote. The first task is to define just what we want to occur and when we need to measure, what specific time. This is quite important, the SMART model for objectives, and this really tells us that what we're setting ourselves to do is specific, is measurable, is appropriate, is realistic, and is time-bound. So in other words, if you use the SMART model, you're not shooting yourself in the foot, but you're actually setting yourself something that you can achieve. The data approach, some other approaches to measure return is to get an understanding on return on impressions model, return on social media impact model, return on target influence model, and of course return on earned media model, right? Which means that we need to see how much of the overall engagement online are giving us a better business, whether it's around selling or promoting products and services. The evaluation and measurement process, of course, there are several ways of doing that, but some of the key processes are presented in the slide. Simple ways to start measuring content consumption. So in other words, how much that content that you publish is being consumed by others. It just clearly tells you whether you're writing good content or whether your content is relevant to the need that is being expressed in the web. Right? So you are developing content to meet up the need that is expressed on the web, and in this case, social media. So if you're able to develop content that feeds that need that is expressed on the web, then you're on the winning side. Whether you've got a blog, a YouTube channel, whatever it is, you have got a successful business. Content augmentation, who is adding or changing your content by continuing the conversation with a response post. So who's looking after that? Content is being changed all the time. Content sharing, so who's sharing the content and what's the rate that your brand is exposed to in terms of sharing your content and third-party content as well. Content loyalty, how many consumers have subscribed to your content or branded content with RSS feeds or subscribe to your Facebook fan page or to your YouTube channel and so on. Content conversations, who is discussing the brand, right? Again, that is something that you can learn with social media monitoring tools, right? Content engagement is the number of friends to brand profiles growing. So how much of that engagement is happening with the brand on social media and why? Now, let's look at some of the tools. Now, we talked quite a bit about tools, but now we need to look at some of those popular tools online. There are hundreds and thousands of tools out there, right? And again, just don't forget that social media monitoring tools are very much those websites that help us to monitor how well we do with social media activities. And those individual social media activities can come from Twitter, from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from YouTube, anywhere that you've got presence in, right? So the whole idea is to have one unique place where you will manage your entire social media presence. So instead of going in individual networking sites, which we do, but instead of being there all the time, we can have one single platform where we manage absolutely everything from there. From the engagement, publishing post, the time of the day when we're going to publish the post the most, engaging with clients or customers or visitors online into our social networking monitoring tools. And then of course at the same time reporting back to everyone in the company how are we doing with social media through those monitoring tools. And that's why monitoring tools are important, because they combine everything into one. So then you can start to tell what's working, what's not working, and then just quickly report key objectives and report key metrics to everyone in the company. And then you disseminate that information to everyone so they can either learn from what you're getting out of social media, or they all come back to you and they start finding some improvements that you can do within social media activities, or maybe update, modify, adjust things that need to be changed, so then you can get a better outcome or more relevant outcome of social media activities. That's why monitoring tools are really important. And as soon as you're out there in the business world, whether you're running your own business or you're going to be working for someone else, you will be spending quite a bit of time on some of these websites that I'm calling them monitoring tools, because they are not a typical website in the news, but they are very dynamic websites that work around and crunch so many thousands of interactions online, and then they come up with the report that is relevant to you. So they do all that legwork for yourself. Google Analytics is the first one, probably the most popular ones out there. And Google Analytics is not just for social media. Google Analytics is very much a platform that allows you to monitor absolutely every engagement online that you've got as a company. But of course, to be able to use this, you've got to have some sort of presence. You've got to have a website or a blog or something like that, right? Because otherwise you can't really measure what other things are and how well you're doing online. Obviously, because YouTube is owned by Google, Google Analytics works perfectly well with YouTube. But Google Analytics help us to get a really good understanding about the traffic that we're getting from social media. What are some of the keywords that are driving that traffic? And what are some of the links and referral links that are getting to us from third-party websites? This is just how Google Analytics dashboard look like. Again, it's quite comprehensive. It gives us quite a lot of information from the traffic, the keywords, the links, and the audience engaged with our website. But as I said to you, Google Analytics is used for almost every activity online, not just social media. It's not tailored just to social media, but actually measures absolutely everything from your SEO, organic growth on your SEO, paid advertising online, or other affiliate marketing online. Really good thing with Google Analytics is because it gives us an idea as to how many people now are live engaging with our website. So in other words, we can start to tell as to where people are into our website and what are they doing. And then of course, we need to start learning some of the metrics in Google Analytics. For instance, how long people are spending time in our website. And if you've got a blog and people spend 10 seconds in your website, that's not a good sign, because that just means that you're either attracting wrong visitors, or maybe what you're offering within your website is not relevant. So these are some of the key metrics that are quite useful for GA. So Google Analytics has got the social bit where you can set yourself up to understand overview of social media activities, sources, the pages that are driving those engagement and activities, conversions, social plugins, when you can really link your accounts to Google through specific links that you've got, and then social visitors flows as well. Again, the traffic, and the good thing about GA is the fact that you can actually set specific goals that you want to achieve based on your online presence. So you can start to identify goals that you're interested in within your own business, and every business will have different goals, but in this particular one that we took it was around renewing memberships, setting up new memberships, donating, time on the site, and then visits. These are some of the key goals. But then, when you set up yourself into Google Analytics, you'll start to set up key goals for you. If you've got a blog, your goal is to increase set amount of users or subscribers every week or every month. And you set that goal for yourself into Google, and then you start following that up with specific activities. So in other words, Google helps you improve your online presence. And not because they really like you, but that's because they want you to do a very good job, so that one day, when you do really well, you're going to go back and use pay-per-click advertising and then use Google advertising platform and then pay for some advertising in Google. So it's quite a clever process of how they run the business. And then again, I strongly recommend you either set up your own blog or like some sort of website, activate that through Google Analytics, and then learn how it works, because it's going to serve you in the long run quite well. And if you're very good in using Google Analytics, that's a skill you can add into your CV as well. Your social influence. So social influence is to really get an understanding as to how well we're doing online with our social media activities. So, one popular tool online is Social Mention. Just gives us an idea as to how well we're doing online with our brand. For instance, the strength of our content and other mentions by total mentions. So, sentiment, the ratio of good and bad online. Passion, in this case, 31%. So, chances to receive repeat mentions from your unique users. Sentiment, again, total social conversions, and the number of authors normally divided by the number of mentions in the 9% reach out there. Cloud has been quite popular for a bit, but now not as much as we thought it would, but just shows you how influential you are online based on your social network activities from Twitter, Facebook, and so on. I think this is from me for last year. The scores are normally calculated using variables that can include numbers of followers, frequency of updates, the class scores of your friends and followers, and the number of likes, retweets, and shares that your updates receives all the time. So that's the cloud score. And the cloud score just gives you an idea as to how well you're doing, and sometimes it tells you that you're doing slightly better, sometimes slightly worse. But then the actual breakdown of the content, it can be quite useful as well. The next one, similar to Cloud, is the Crit. And Crit it's very similar concept. It's trying to get an understanding as how influential you're online.
and who are those people engaging with you quite a lot. And again, in my case, most of them is going to be students, marketing, business people, right? So these are very much the target audience that I interact the most with. But I think this one is quite good as well, because it just gives us some top communities that we are engaging with online, and what is some of those most popular sort of updates and posts that we published online. Twitter Counter, again, is just another tool that helps us to get a better understanding as to how well we're doing online with followers. And also quite a good thing is that you can actually compare different brands online when it comes to Twitter and how well they're doing overall. Now, Hootsuite is a social media monitoring tool which allow you to, it's very much a quite comprehensive set of tools within the actual Hootsuite, because you can set yourself up to track all your different social media activities, but that goes with likes, hashtags, accounts, retweets, followers, mentions, everything else. So you can do all of that into one place, and the two good benefits of Hootsuite is that they allow us to engage with community online from the same website, okay? But also we can report back everything that we want to specific people inside the company, and in addition to that, we can actually get people to engage with us within our company to manage our social media presence. So it's like a complete set of tools that help us to monitor online, not just individually, but as a group, as a company, and then report back some of those successes. Sprout Social is a paid tool. I think the university uses this to monitor social media activities online. It's quite comprehensive as well, gives us an idea about messages, sent messages, followers and improvement of followers, or sort of like challenges that we've got, Twitter followers and the target audience, right? Demographics as well, so it's quite a comprehensive one as well. And there are hundreds of thousands of other tools which I'd like you to play around with. And again, you will identify those that are most relevant to the research that you're doing yourself. And then you can report back some of those tools to us, either using the module hashtag online, or we can do that on our next week's tutorial. And that's it.